Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's live chat with wine, where this month I will be talking about memories, Star Trek memories, among other things. I don't have to spend the whole time talking about that. We can hit some other topics if you all want to, but I do want to spend at least uh, the beginning part of this video and the bulk of it talking about that. Welcome to Aaron Lee. I believe your debut in the live chat with me. I don't recall. Um, Maddie Jester, of course, a regular. Guessing the wine, Pinot. No, you were never going to guess it. No, I don't. I can't afford any Picard, Chateau Picard. I tell you, I go to grocery outlet and get bottles of wine for $5.99. So I liked the picture on this one. This is mainly why I got it, and it's a proper petite Verdot uh, Lodi. I don't know. Then it has this whole thing in the back says hello wine enthusiast, and has this whole paragraph to like try to convince you that this is like an actual like proper wine and not just like something you can get at grocery outlet for $5.99. So, but whatever. The wine's not important this month. Yeah, petite Verdot, a Verdot. I don't know. I'm not a wine enthusiast. I just drink it. You're singing Sonic Youth. Oh, welcome, Brandon. Welcome, Tyler. Brandon singing Sonic Youth in the late morning. I'm singing memories. That's why my username, in case you're wondering why it's spelled that way, memories. That's why that is. I know that Mark will get this reference because Mark and I used to talk about this all the time. We joke about this from Naked Gun 2.5, when Priscilla Presley is taking a shower and the villain is like trying to sneak up on her and murder her or something, and she's singing in the shower memories, and then the like villain starts singing along scattered pictures and starts getting all sappy, and then he goes gotta be, and then she realizes he's there and starts screaming. And the whole bit. That's Mark and I always joke about that. I will say though, and I think Mark and I probably have a disagreement on this, that for me the Naked Gun films don't hold up as as much. I think, and I don't think they age well. First of all, O.J. Simpson is in them, so I mean that in itself, like that doesn't age well. But also beyond that, a lot of the jokes are, by today's standards, by what we know now, maybe not the best. um, yes, the Barbara Streisand memories, but I was I was familiar with Naked Gun 2.5 before I was familiar with the actual like source material. um, I think Brandon, you've said before you don't like the Naked Gun, and I feel like we've had this discussion before. Speaking of memories, where I was in 8th grade and we had like some exchange students from Australia come in and like just sit there and tell us about like their experience in America and how it's different from what they're used to. And it was when Naked Gun came out, and they were like, "We went to see Naked Gun. It was so stupid." I'm not even going to try to do the accent. I just will do a horrible job. It's so stupid. and at that time, I hadn't seen it yet. I actually took their word for it because the commercials to me looked really stupid. But then eventually when I saw it, I was like, oh, I get this. And then I thought back to those Australian girls, and I was like, oh, it's not their just style of humor. They're probably taking it literally. Yeah, I know it's not your jam, Brendan, because you're Australian. This is what I've decided based on 3 people. Those 2 girls and Brandon, that Australians don't like that style of humor from the Naked Gun. Yeah, Liam Neeson in the new Naked Gun. I think we had this discussion before, and I have said before that I do not really. I'm not really that excited about that. I think that's a film franchise we can go ahead and let die. And I think I know that Mark disagrees with me on that. Um, Tyler, after I get through the Star Trek memories, if there's time at the end, if you want to re-ask your questions, I'm not always going to get to questions that you leave and on my reviews when you're asking questions that have absolutely nothing with my review. I know you don't mean it this way, but it makes me feel like you don't care about my review and you're just asking questions that are completely unrelated. This is a good forum to ask those questions. However, I am going to talk about Star Trek memories first, but I'll allow some time at the end. I'm sure Will Ferrell #1 will pop in here too. He's another person who likes to ask me random questions. So I think after we go through the Star Trek memories, I'll allow some time for random questions, and then you can re-ask those. I don't remember what they were. You can re-ask them, and I can answer them. But wait, don't do it now because we're going to talk about Star Trek memories. I'll tell you. Okay, time for questions when we get to that point. My reviews on Facebook, yes. And occasionally when I do post videos too, but I was mainly talking about my reviews on Facebook. Norman. Oh, hi, Norman. Welcome. Got a good group today. Brandon, Norman, Maddie, kind of, I think the main three who have been here the most often, but then we're also joined by Tyler, who's been here a bunch as well. And pretty sure the first time I've seen Aaron Lee in here. So very happy to have you. Last episode of Lower Decks was a much better example of Easter eggs than most Picard season 3. Yeah, probably might want to chat about the latest episode of Lower Decks. I'll tell you what, Tyler. If you have to leave, because if you post them now, I won't remember them. I'll have to scroll all the way up. So if you have to leave, I'll go and find them on my Facebook page, and I'll answer them. Okay, so memories. So it's unfortunate Jordan Johnson isn't here. I'm not sure if he's ever joined my live chat or not, but I'm doing this because Jordan Johnson did a live stream with Mark like a month or two ago. I don't know. All the time blends together. I don't remember when it was. And it was Jordan Johnson's idea. It was a Patreon requested video, and then he did it with Mark. And they talked about their memories watching Star Trek. And Jordan's were more focused on like specific scenes and how he felt when he first watched them, and Mark's was more like a comment on life, like what was going on in their life at that time. Mine might be a mix of that. I don't know. But I want to preface this by saying, well, first of all, I kind of wish I was there because I would have added another perspective. But I want to preface this by saying this: I have a different perspective from them, and I feel like most Star Trek reviewers that I ever watch, such as Jesse Gender, such as Sean Ferrick, Steve Shives, because I am older, so I grew up in a different era. So, like, and Jesse Gender is always talking about. She grew up with Star Trek Enterprise, and in the video that Mark and Jordan did, Jordan was talking about like he got hooked. He used to watch Deep Space Nine with his dad, and Mark, I think, though he watched Next Generation with me first, I think Deep Space Nine was the first one, and he'll say it's his favorite one. But Brandon said that you wonder why I wasn't there. I wasn't invited, but it was because it's because it was a Patreon requested video from Jordan that he wanted to do with Mark. Like, I take no offense that I wasn't invited. It was a thing like he wanted to do with Mark, like the two of them. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. Anyways, so my history, Brandon, I just explained it to you. I don't. You may have asked that question before I explained it because I know there's a delay in time. But yeah, that's why it's not a problem. It was a Patreon requested video for Mark. Jordan wanted to do with Mark. It would be weird for Mark to be like, "Hey, I'm inviting Alyssa too," because that's not what the idea of it was. Norman grew up on TOS reruns. I was an undergrad when TNG premiered, so Norman's even older than me. But I'm a similar that I grew up on TOS reruns, and I'm going to talk about my first memory is going to be my first time ever watching Star Trek, which I have talked about on this channel before, but I'm going to talk about it again, which I'll get to that. And it was TOS. So I grew up on TOS reruns, but I would say the most impactful part of Star Trek for me in my youth was the films, particularly Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, and Star Trek 4. I think that's what made me a Trekkie. I also watched the shows too, the reruns of TOS, but I think the movies were my favorite. In all three of those, I don't care what people say about Star Trek 3. All three of those were like my favorite. Now, when it comes to Star Trek television, the first show that really got me was Next Generation. I'm a bit younger than Norman. I was 13 when Next Generation premiered, but that makes me still way older than people like Jesse Gender and Mark and everyone else who I watch on YouTube, who came of age in a whole different era. So I was 13, but I think when I really actually got in to Next Generation, like really was into it, and I'm going to talk about this later too, was 1990, so I was like 16. So that's probably when I first got into it. But TNG to me is the show. That's my Star Trek. Everybody will have their Star Trek. TNG was my Star Trek. That was my show. That to me, my captain is Captain Picard. My engineer is Geordi. My first officer is William Riker. I would even go so far as to say my doctor is Beverly Crusher. And Space Ghost aside, that's my crew. Like that's the crew I grew up with. Deep Space Nine, probably my second favorite because I was still very much into Star Trek when that was around, and I was really into that as well. Although I liked TNG better, I still was really into it. By the time Voyager came around, felt like I was just going through the motions and watching it just because it had the word Star Trek in it, and I never really got into Voyager as much. And then Enterprise, honestly, I didn't really appreciate until recent years. So, yes, Tyler, I did see Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 in the theaters. Mark was with me. He will have no memory of seeing Star Trek 2 because he was like 3, but I do remember we were in Ocean City, Maryland. Was like our vacation spot, the beach spot, and we always went to see like a couple movies. We would spend a week there, and we would always go see a couple movies while we were there. And if I'm not mistaken, we saw Star Trek 2 and E.T. in the same week in Ocean City. And so like there's no babysitter to leave Mark with, so they brought their 3-year-old to the theater with them. But Mark will tell you he has zero memory of seeing Star Trek 2. He was 3. I'm not sure if he remembers Star Trek 3 either. I can't remember what Mark said about that. Star Trek 4, he should remember. He was like 7. But yes, I did see all of them in the theater. Some episodes of TOS didn't air until the 90s in my country. What was the one where Bones gets tortured and nearly died? That one was too much, apparently. I don't remember which one you're talking about. I don't know. Okay, so I want to start with my memories, with my very, very first memory of watching Star Trek. So let me take a sip. Memories. Excuse me. I might have to get up and get some water at some point. I forgot to get some water with my wine. Or I could do a reverse Jesus and turn this into water, and then turn it back into wine. Probably I'm just gonna have to get up. But let me first talk about my first Star Trek memory. So I want to say it was 4. That was 4 1978. Part of me thinks like there. I'll get into some reasons why as I tell the story. Why I think must have been a little older. Like I must have been 5. But if I was 5, that would have been 1979, and that was the year that the motion picture came out. And not one of the memories I want to talk about, but I do have a very clear memory of absolutely seeing the motion picture at a drive-through theater in my parents' big-ass station wagon with a bunch of blankets and pillows in the back. And I definitely saw it at the theater. And at that time, I already knew the characters. Like I already knew who Spock was. And I remember like wondering why Spock had long hair. And like I knew all the characters already. So I was already familiar with it. And it came out in 1979. Although it's possible, because drive-in theaters will often have like, they'll show re-releases or old movies. So could have been 1980 and it was a year later. That's entirely possible. But I definitely saw my first episode of Star Trek before that. So if I saw that in 79, then my first Star Trek episode was probably I watched in 1978. Or maybe earlier in 1979, who knows. But in 1978, I would have been 4. And yes, Tyler, Mark is correct. Our mom did take him with us to go see Star Trek 2, and he doesn't remember it. Yeah. Anyways, so I remember going over to my grandma's apartment, and at the time, my Aunt Mary lived with my grandma. I think my Aunt Mary was still in her early 20s. She was younger than my mom. My mom had me pretty young. She was young too. But I think she was still like in her early 20s, and she lived in my grandma's apartment for a period of time. I remember going over there, and I just remember very clearly my Aunt Mary like we just started watching Star Trek, and I remember her explaining to me what was happening and like who the characters were and what was going on, and I was captivated by it. Now, if you haven't heard the story before, I have talked about it before, but if you haven't heard the story before, brace yourselves for what episode it was. And I think I will make the point that this episode was made for 4-year-olds. That's why it's generally considered to be one of the worst episodes. But the episode that like really captured my imagination at age 4 was When the Children Shall Lead. That is my first memory of watching Star Trek, was When the Children Shall Lead. And I just remember just being so like mesmerized by their like little chant that they did. Call me the angel, da, da, da. And I was 4, so like I like kind of I think empathize with the kids. Like I was also a kid. I was a younger kid even than the kids in the show. So like I really like, to me, I was like seeing things from the kids' point of view, and I remember just being so mesmerized by the call me an angel, yeah. And in my mind, and now this is why I think I might have been 5, because I clearly remember thinking that it was like George Washington with like feathers. Like I was like, did I know who George Washington was when I was 4? I don't know, because I definitely remember thinking it was George Washington with like feathers. And then at the end where they like they defeat him or whatever, like my memory of that is George Washington with chicken pox. We get all these little red dots. It's like they're making George Washington get chicken pox. Again, I must have been 5 because I think I got chicken pox when I was 5. So I don't know. I must have saw a motion picture in 1980. This is all blending together. I don't know. Uh, so that was my first memory. So to this day, first of all, I got to say hi to Allison. Thanks for joining me. So good to see you, Allison. Love to see you. So Norman says this is the first episode for him, or worst episode for him. But I loved it, and this proves the theory of how bad that episode is. It was written for 4-year-olds. Like 4-year-olds love and the children shall lead. Because it was perfect for me with my 4-year-old brain. Now I will recognize, like, objectively, it's a bad episode of Star Trek. Like, I will never sit here and say that it is anything other than a terrible episode of Star Trek. But you will never see me put it in a top 10 worst list or a top 20 worst list. It is exempt from being in my worst list, even though objectively I recognize it's one of the worst episodes of Star Trek in the original series, and there's a lot of them. And just adds to my theory of why season 3 is the absolute worst season. And I can't even believe Mark says season 2 is even remotely as bad as season 3. So the whole season sucked, except for a few mediocre episodes here and there. Anyways, and the children shall lead. Yeah, and I can say now, objectively, it's a bad episode, but because of the nostalgia, I will never put it in. I just have this. There's a place in my heart for that episode, even if I do recognize it is objectively it's bad. So I always thought my Aunt Mary is the one who got me into Star Trek, and then my mom also watched Star Trek. So I didn't live with my Aunt Mary; I lived with my mom. So I have a lot of memories with my mom, watching Star Trek with my mom. But. Side story, this is not really one of my memories, but it is related. This actually happened, something that happened earlier this year in 2024. I went to see so the IMAX theater here in Portland had this science fiction film fest where they were showing different sci-fi movies for a couple months in the spring. I also went and saw 2001: The Space Odyssey for the very first time, believe it or not. I never actually sat through that whole movie. But I went with my friend, the same friend I went to see 2001 with. We went to see Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. And while I was waiting in line to go into the theater, I get a text from my dad informing me that my Aunt Mary has passed away. And I was like, this is insane timing. Like, this is the first... I mean, to be fair, I wasn't like super close with her in our adulthood, simply because she lived in upstate New York and my parents lived in Maryland and I live on the West Coast. So I didn't see her that much, but I do think of my aunts and uncles, she is the one I probably connected with the most. And she was the one who introduced me to Star Trek. I mean, this whole thing, everything that came after that, is I watched Star Trek with my Aunt Mary, and I get the news that she passed away while I'm going to see Star Trek 2 at the IMAX. And I tell you what, that was the saddest Star Trek 2 I've ever seen. Like, I've seen it a gazillion times, but I was like tearing up for the whole movie. Like the whole movie. And then when we get to the Spock death scene, I already knew that this was going to happen. Like, I could feel it. When we got to the Spock death scene, I was like, like, I was just bawling. And I've seen this a billion times, but I was just like so emotional because like it's crazy. My aunt, who introduced me to this whole world, like passed away while I was going to see Star Trek 2 at the IMAX. Very crazy. Okay, let's see. Let me jump back in the chat, see what you all see. Love to see you. Hope you're doing well. You too, Allison. So nice to see you. Soon after I watched Space Seed, and I continued watching the movies. After the TOS movies, took a break from Star Trek for the summer of 2018. Okay, Brandon. When did you see Miri? I also liked Miri when I was a kid. I don't think it took very long for me to like really hate Miri. So I don't have the same nostalgia with Miri as I do with the Children Shall Lead, but I do remember pop pop in the head and like really beat into that. So I also saw Miri when I was pretty young as well. Also liked it. Let's see. You guys are talking about 2001. Let's see. Allison says Star Wars in 1977 sets itself in my mind more than Trek during childhood. About the same time period. This was definitely a re-release. It has to be because I couldn't have been 3. Because I have a clear memory of getting in the car with my other brother before Margaret was born, and going, and she had a red Plymouth. No, not a Plymouth. What do you call this? It was a crap. I'm blanking on it. It was like a Pinto. Pinto. And we went and saw Star Wars in the theaters, and both my brother and I fell asleep. And I remember waking up during the like the scene when they're trying to destroy the Death Star, and I was like, "Grandma, is this almost over yet?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's almost over." And I went back to sleep. but I was like, I have specific memories of being captivated by that film too. I didn't understand it at all, but I have specific memories of that film as well. Now we're doing Star Wars memories, but Allison brought it up. Yeah, I'm 5 years older than Mark, so I was 5 by the time Mark came along, which seemed like at the time, in our childhood and teenagehood, and even in my early 20s, like I'm a gazillion years older than Mark. But now it's like, we're the same age, pretty much. Like we're basic. It's all the same. Once you get in your 40s, it's all the same. Let's see. Okay. What else? Shall we move on to another memory? This is another one that I've talked about before. It's not a big one, but I always think about it when I think, and I actually did talk about this in my top 100 when I got to Mirror Mirror. My specific memories of watching that episode for the first time and like watching it in the middle of it, and like, and I remember asking my mom why Spock had a beard. Like I was so confused why Spock had a beard, and didn't see the beginning of it. I was just like started watching in the middle of the episode, and she had to explain to me what parallel universes were, and I was like, oh, and that's like started my whole like fascination with parallel universes, which I still have today. So I did enjoy the latest episode of Lower Decks, but I also have some issues with it. But maybe we'll have time to talk about that later. But that started my passion, and that's why Parallels is one of my favorite episodes as well. So Lost my train of thought. Take a sip of wine. It'll help my train of thought come back into the station. Yeah, so that's where that all started. Because I just remember just being like at this feeling of, wow, that's really cool. Like it's more like this feeling that I had. And then I do remember later, just watching on reruns. And then when it came back around again on reruns at some point, I don't know how much further in the future this was, but I did get to see the entire episode. And I am still just to this day, I get chills when they come off the transporter and goes dun 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 dun, and they do the like, basically the Hitler Nazi thing, but they modify it slightly to make it the Empire. And that still gives me chills. That music, and then like they go to commercial and they come back and it's like the slow music, and everyone's like, Captain, what are we doing? He's like, no, not now, not now. But like, I don't know. I just remember being, even though, it wasn't the first time I was introduced to this concept, because I had seen the episode before, like halfway through. I don't remember if I like knew which episode it was, though. I don't know, but I just remember being like, my mind is blown, like when I saw this. Age, I don't know, like 6, 7. I don't know. I don't know. So probably would have been before I saw Star Trek 2. Star Trek 2, 1982, I would have been 8. So probably before that. 6 or 7, it sounds right. Let me jump in the chat for a second before I move on to the next memory. Oh, Allison, you're also about 5 years older than your fishy brother. How are you? You don't have to give me your specific age, Allison, but I'm just curious. Like, I think we've talked about this before, like where you relate to me in age. I'm 50. I make no bones about my age. I don't care. I'm 50. I remember when I was a kid, everyone was so excited for Star Wars that Jar Jar was quite a character. Oh, you're younger. Jar Jar. Well, that was not a kid when Jar Jar was around. Oh, Tyler, I think you're continuing something you were talking about before. Let's see. Oh, watching Generations and First Contact. I took a break from Star Trek until Picard came out. I'd never seen Nemesis or Star Trek. I didn't understand the references. I also had no idea who 7-9 was. Yeah. That would make it difficult. And Tyler is quite a bit younger than me. Very, very different. I love seeing the different people with different ages, like having different experiences, like what first got them into Star Trek. I came across someone in an online forum, like a chat or a message board, whatever we call them these days, who said that they were introduced to Star Trek by Lower Decks, and I was like, "That's really cool. I love that." Allison, me too. Super Friends cartoon. I don't remember their Mirror Universe episode though. I don't remember that. I remember do you remember the challenge of the Super Friends? And they were like, it was this. They would it would be like all of the Super Friends, like all of them, because in normal Super Friends episodes, you'd only get like a few here and there, and like they'd mix in Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were almost always there, but like the other ones, the Apache Chief, and even the Flash and Green Lantern, and some they would like filter in and out. But Challenge of the Super Friends had all of them, and and then the villains were all together in one big super team, like led by Lex Luthor and Scarecrow, I think, was there. Like all these villains were there, and the Cheetah was like the Wonder Woman's nemesis. Like there was like all of the villains versus all of the heroes. That was like my favorite. The challenge of the Super Friends, and the villains would fly around in the spaceship that I thought looked like a Darth Vader head, and and I actually had a case to keep all my Star Wars figurines in that it was shaped like Darth Vader, and then I would use that when I was playing with my toys. As I would, have like I would play Super Friends. I didn't have all the Super Friends, figures, but I would use like the guy from Empire Strikes Back who's bald, who has like the computer head. I would like use him as Lex Luthor or whatever. But anyways, like I would like have them get into the Darth Vader head and fly around because the villains flew around in a Darth Vader head. Now we're talking about Super Friends memories. Allison brought that up too. So now like yeah, that was a good memory. Super Friends. Will Ferrell, number one. As I told Tyler earlier, Will Ferrell, number one. We'll get to random questions later. Ask me again after I'm done talking about Star Trek memories and apparently Super Friends memories and Star Wars memories as well. But mainly I wanted to get into Star Trek memories. And then you can ask me those random questions. Aaron Lee, that's kind of nice too. You don't really remember. It was just there. It's just always been the thing that's there. that's kind of cool too, in its own way. Yes, Hall of Justice versus the Legion of Doom. But it wasn't like the Hall of Justice. It was like all of them were always there. Whereas I remember the other Super Friends cartoons, like they wouldn't ever all be there at the same time. Okay, so the Wizard of Oz based episode. I vaguely remember that one. Don't get me on a tangent about Wizard of Oz because I still haven't seen Wicked yet and I want to see it, but let's not get into that. You'd love to see the Darth Vader head. That's long gone. That's something I had like 40 years ago. When I was a kid, I don't have the Darth Vader head anymore. All right. Anyways. Oh, and Allison, you're basically my age, 52. Like we're right there. We're right there. All right. We're Gen Xers. Okay, so next memory. I don't know if I want to, I said the films had a big impact on me, but I don't have any specific memory attached to the films. I just remember, as I said, we went to see Star Trek 2 in Ocean City when we were on vacation. And that's end of story. Like not a very interesting memory. Here, Gen Xers. Anyways, yeah, Mark is right on the cusp. I've actually I saw some YouTube video that said people born between like 1978 and 1982 or something were like, I forget what they said, like millennial Xers or something. Like they combine the two things. Like you're right on the cusp. But Mark will say that they identify more with millennials. Well, I am definitely a Gen Xer. Anyways. Next issue. Let's get into the TNG memories. So here's another one I have a fun memory of that I still to this day don't think this is as bad of an episode as other people say it is. And at one point I used to think it was my favorite episode. And that is Skin of Evil. And well, I mean, to be fair, season 1 of TNG sucked. But I remember that being my favorite episode because mind blown. Killing off a main character? That just didn't happen. Especially not in Star Trek, but even in other things that I watched, like that wasn't a thing. that shows ever did. And I was like, what? They just killed it. And like, to me, like Armis was scary. Like he was creepy. Like he freaked me out. And I just remember my mind being blown by Tasha Yar being killed. Now people like that episode sucked. It was a meaningless death. Blah blah blah. The character wasn't done any justice. Sure. But well, like my mind was blown when I saw it, and I still to this day will never say it's not anywhere close to my top 100 or anything like that. But I have some nostalgia for it. I still think it's a better episode than other people do. Okay. Prank called Armis. Yes, that was amazing. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 4, Voyage Home, Star Trek 6, Undiscovered, are the best of the original. And First Contact is best of the TNG movies. So you're doing the even number theory. That only the even number ones are the best. I'm with Mark. I throw Star Trek 3 in that bunch. I would probably rank it fourth, to be fair, out of the four. I think Mark has Star Trek 3 over Star Trek 6, but I would probably rank it fourth. But to me, like, it was good. So I'd put those four as the four best. Star Trek 5 is one of the worst movies ever made, let alone Star Trek movies. I saw Steve Shives in a video a few months ago, like trying to retcon Star Trek 5 into a good movie. I didn't watch the video. It's not. You can't pretend. It's like people trying to retcon the prequels of Star Wars to being good. They're terrible. You can't pretend that they're good now. Like Star Trek 5 will always be one of the worst movies. It was just like a vanity project for William Shatner. Like it was just William, because Captain Kirk was like unbeatable. He was the best, and they needed Captain Kirk to save the universe. And McCoy and even Spock were just buffoons compared to the great Captain Kirk. Like it was just like a vanity project for William Shatner. It was terrible. There's no way you can say it was a good movie. Anyways, tangent. You also say First Contact is the best of the TNG movies. This is probably the most common point of view. This is where I disagree with everyone. Generations is the best. First Contact is the most overrated movie of all time, up there, maybe second to Star Trek 2009. First Contact is a vastly overrated movie. It was a movie created just to sell movie tickets at the expense of the Borg. Like they just ruined the Borg. They just completely changed the way the Borg was. But again, I think it's generational because people who grew up with First Contact and didn't already understand the Borg or didn't already like spend many years following the Borg and know what the Borg were all about, maybe didn't understand that they fucking ruined the Borg to sell movie tickets. So yeah, to me, Generations, that's one of my memories. I'll get to Generation. Why Generations is my favorite. I'm not saying Generations is a great movie. I think all the Next Generation movies are pretty bad, but of the bad ones, Generations is the best. Let's see. Let's see. Wait. I thought somebody said something else I was going to reply. I thought Allison might have said something else I was going to reply to. Oh, do you remember the Save the Whales being a big environmentalism thing in the 80s? Yes, I do. And I mean, the movie about it. But the movie holds. The movie's still good. Yeah, it was a Greenpeace thing. Yeah, I do remember that. Let's see. Is there anything else? Okay. What does God need with Star Trek 5? Okay, anyways. Where did I leave off? So, Next Generation. Tashi already talked about that. So, I watched the first two seasons when they aired, and I don't think I made it all the way through season 2. I don't recall that I saw Shades of Grey when it originally aired. Like, I think I gave up because there was a writer's strike, and I think there might have been interrupted, and it came back. I want to say I stopped after the writer's strike, but my memory could be all missy-mashy. But I don't know. I don't think that I don't recall that I watched Shades of Grey when it aired. So I think I gave up on the Next Generation even before season 2 was over, because I was just like not into it, and I was like, I'm gonna go out and ride my bike and play basketball and do fun things outdoors, not on a Saturday evening rather than watching this crappy show. But then, so I didn't watch. So I didn't watch season 3 or 4 as it aired. So I'm thank God, like I didn't have to wait the whole summer for to find out what happened in Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Because by the time I watched it, I watched it a rerun. So I just watched it Part 2 the day after I watched Part 1. And I was like, holy shit, people had to wait the whole summer. Like, so thank God I skipped season 3 and season 4 and then watched it back in reruns. But my memory is what hooked me back. What got me back is this one day, I don't remember why, but I decided to somehow I just ended up sitting down and watching reruns of Next Generation that were reruns of the most recent season, because it was a summertime. So they were just, every week they would still show episodes, but it was just reruns because it was summertime. And it was reruns of season 4. So this was in between season 4 and season 5. Which actually, maybe, was that 1991? I said 1990 earlier. Wait, 87 to 88 was 1. 88 to 82 was 2. I mean, sorry, wait, 88 to 89 was 2. 89 to 90 was 3. 90 to 91 was 4. So it was 91. So I was 17. She's only 17. Creepiest song ever written. Anyways. I was 17 when I watched I was watching these reruns in the summer, and I remember watching first the wine is making me a little forgetful. It was I know the name of this episode. The one where Geordi turns into the creature thing when his old friend comes back. Somebody put that in the chat. I know the name of it, and I just can't pull it up right now. That was the first one I watched. I was like, oh, and I was interested in it. I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. This like alien species that kind of like takes over. That's how they reproduce. But then, like right after that, they showed The Mind's Eye, and that's what got me. The Mind's Eye brought me back into Star Trek. I was just so riveted by this episode, and I just remember being on the edge of my seat, and like it just the ending. The ending when I remember Data is like figuring it all out. He's like examining the shuttlecraft. And I'm like, come on, Data, figure it out. And because Geordi he's going closer to kill it, trying to murder the Klingon dude. And I'm like, come on, Data, figure it out. And I just remember Data walking down the hall and going, Data to Wolf, take Lieutenant LaForge into custody, or Commander LaForge into custody, sir. That is an order. And just like it was just one, I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna do it. And like it's just being like I loved the resolution of this episode. And this is I was just super into it. I became disappointed later when I realized that this episode really has fucking nothing to do with canon. But so that's what brought me back into TNG, and I never looked back. And then TNG after that became my show, as I was saying earlier. So yeah, The Mind's Eye. that's my memory. The episode that brought me back. Unfortunately, though, I did not get to see the rerun of Redemption Part 1 before I saw Redemption Part 2, because season 5 then is when I started watching it again as it aired, and I of course would watch the rest of the series every week as it aired. But I saw Redemption Part 2, and I had not seen Redemption Part 1 on rerun. I also had not seen yesterday's Enterprise, so I was like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, what? How is there Tasha Yar's a Romulan now?" And Whoopi Goldberg knows some mysterious thing that, "Oh, you did. You sent her back in time." I'm like, what? Like, I was so confused. So confused. Yeah. Norman says, "Very good, Miss Alyssa. Very good." Actually, it's good, Mr. LaForge. Very good. He says, "Good, Mr. LaForge. Very good." That's what and that actor has been in several episodes, and I'm always like, why does he talk like that? What is that accent? Like, "Good, Mr. LaForge. Very good." Like that. Yeah. Let's see. Allison says the wait was agony. I'm assuming you're talking about Best of Both Worlds. I'm glad I skipped that. I remember watching Up the Long Ladder, and I said, "What the F is this?" Yeah, I mean, I didn't understand that it was bad Irish stereotypes, but I was also like, this is not quality television that I'm watching here. Let's see. That was the last straw, and then Future Imperfect was the next one. Did you like the DS9 episode crossover? And did you know what the reason Odo got the turtleneck uniform for when he Overjoes was fan of the Bureau? I did like that episode crossover. I didn't know about the turtleneck thing. Fairhaven, if you steered, yeah. See, again, as I said before, Voyager, I wasn't into as much. I know a lot of those episodes I didn't watch when they came on originally. So I didn't actually see Fairhaven, I don't think, when it first came. So let's see. TNG was high school and college for me. TNG ended, was that my senior year of high school? Yeah, I believe so. I think as I was graduating high school, that's when TNG ended, right? Was it 92 or 93 that it ended? No. No, it would have been my first year of college. Because it ended in 93. Right? Or did it end in 94? Okay, let me go through this again. So season 1, 87 to 88, season 2, 88 to 89, season 3, 89 to 90, season 4, 90 to 91, season 5, 91 to 92, season 6, 92 to 93, season 7, 93 to 94. Okay, 94. So I was in college. That's right, because now, thank you, Brandon, Identity Crisis. I can't believe I couldn't remember the name of that. So Next Generation, yeah, because Next Generation ended and then Generations came out that same year. Because Will Ferrell #1, we will agree to disagree about Fistful of Datas. That made my top 10 worst list. But other people like it too. It's not just you, but it's one of the worst episodes of Next Generation for me personally, but that's personal taste. When DS9 was starting, it was exciting. My favorite part about DS9 when it first started, and now like this is nothing in retrospect, was that we got to see Wolf 359. I was just super excited about that. It had nothing to do with really the characters of the episode, but that was my favorite part. Oh my god, we get to finally see Wolf 359. The next memory I wanted to talk about. I've talked about this on my channel before too, so maybe you've heard the story. Let me give a content warning, a trigger warning if you're not into drugs, especially psychedelics. And that's not something you want to hear anyone talk about. You can turn this off for a bit, but the first time I did mushrooms was also when first time I saw Generations. And I just love the experience so much. And I was telling a friend of mine recently that to me, mushrooms now are not the same as they were in the 90s, or maybe it was just because they interacted with my 20-something-year-old brain more in a different way than they do now. But I just really clicked with me. and I just like had an amazing time watching this movie. And I know now it's, not an amazing movie, but because of that nostalgia, I think I would still put it ahead of all the other Next Generation movies. And I don't think any of the Next Generation movies are amazing. So Generations is my favorite because the first time I saw it, I was on mushrooms. And then after that, like me and two of my friends, like we were I live where I went to college was like in Western Maryland, so it was like a more rural area. If you, um, for those in the states who know what the state of Maryland looks like, is this weird is the weirdest shape. Like the little skinny part is the western part of it. It's like the more rural areas, and like there were mountains, even though they're like hills compared to mountains on the west coast. But that's where I went to school, and we would just like drive around and like smoke weed and just like drive all over the place into like in the middle of nowhere. Like, and I remember my friend had this like big white station wagon, and like another time we were on mushrooms, and we decided that like this was, and my friend who was driving, by the way, was not tripping. He was sober. But the I remember three of us like were in this big white station wagon, and we decided it was a shuttlecraft. And like for some reason, my friend who was driving became like the commander, and like I was lieutenant commander, and then my other friend was lieutenant. I don't know how the ranking was decided, but like we would go around calling ourselves by our ranks for a while. So that's unrelated to a specific episode, but that's a memory I have, and it started because of seeing Generations on mushrooms. So, uh, let's see. Um, yeah. Let's see what else. Alyssa, I went to Towson for undergrad. I feel like we may have talked about that before. Yeah, you and I. Um, Towson was one of the colleges that I applied to, and I think I got in, but it was like, do I just want to go to school in North Baltimore, or do I want to go to school in the mountains? Like, so I think, I've always been a mountain girl. So yeah, that went out. But I think I did get into Towson. So in a parallel universe, like I went to Towson, you would have still been there. So in a parallel universe, we may have met. Like when we were in our 20s. I was not Alyssa then, though. Unless in this parallel universe I become Alyssa earlier. We could go off on a tangent on that. Anyways, I said I was going to get water. So, and I kind of have to use the restroom too. I don't want to just like leave you guys staring. I'm just going to leave you guys staring at the wine cellar, and and yeah, I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. And when I get back, I think I'm pretty much done with the memories that I wanted to talk about. So then we can start getting into other things. And Will Ferrell, number one, can start asking his questions that he wants to ask. And then looks like Tyler might have left, but I promise him I'd go back to the Facebook page and see what the questions that he asked, so I can answer them. So I'll be right back. Let's put this in. Let's see. Check the board queen upstairs. I don't get the joke. Okay. Let's see, Baltimore North. Yeah. Wasn't that crazy when the Key Bridge went down, Allison? Like, I used to go across that bridge. I mean, not a lot because I usually went through the harbor tunnel, but I have been across that bridge, and I was like, holy fuck, like that bridge. Oh my god. Anyway, the progressive movement was bot progressive or was not, I think is what you meant. Was not progressive or a movement. Discuss. My favorite is always the violent femmes are neither violent nor femmes. Discuss. Which was not actually in that skit. It was in like I was at a show that I was at. That it was like a festival. The Violent Femmes were one of the bands, and like they had that on the screen. Like Violent Femmes were neither violent nor femmes. Discuss, which is very true. They were neither of those things. Okay. Would have been cool if we became friends way back then. Yeah, I would have been a very different, very different person. I would have been presenting as male, but it would have been still could have been cool. Yeah, but you're a couple years older than me, so I'm assuming you did your whole undergrad there. But you would have been a junior when I was a freshman, so we may not have connected. Even if I had gone there, which I did not. Oh, well, she had the board queen of. Okay, you're making a Picard season 2 reference. What are you doing, Maddie? Like, I'm not gonna. I am blocking Picard season 2 out of my memory. Speaking of memories, as best as I can. Unfortunately, parts of it are just seared in my memory forever. Like, I want a hug. Oh, give me a hug. And we're running from the shadows of the night. Like, I'll never get rid of those things. But the rest of it, I'm trying my best to purge from my memories. So I didn't actually remember the whole thing about the board queen and the wine cellar or whatever. Okay, anyways. Let's see. All right. Let me. I promised Tyler that I would answer his question so that later on when he watches this, he can see. Because like I'm not usually gonna answer questions that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about in the review, but I can go back and answer them in a thing like this. So let's see. Okay, Tyler asked, would you be willing to compare the 2 seasons of Prodigy to seasons of Legacy Trek since they have 20 episodes per season, unlike the other seasons of Modern Trek, which only have 10 episodes? The answer is no, because my lack of wanting to compare Modern Trek to Old Trek has absolutely nothing to do with the number of episodes. It has to do with the fact that Modern Trek has not sat with me for 30 years. Like it has not been in my consciousness for 20, 30 years, 40 years, or whatever, the way that the other Treks have. So there's no way I could ever compare them. Also, Modern Trek is just different. It's a Trek from a different age. You can make that argument about the 60s and the 90s Trek as well, but to me, those are more closely associated with one another than Modern Trek is just of a different age. So I don't care how many episodes it has. I'm never going to be able to compare Modern Trek to Legacy Trek in a at least in a top 100 type of format. I assume that's what you're talking about. I did not include Modern Trek in my top 100. I did a separate top 25. Oh, and here's just a little preview of what I'm going to do in 2025. I'm not going to do much, but one thing I do want to do is after Strange New Worlds season 3 is done, I'm going to update my Modern Trek top 25 because it did not include season 5 of Discovery, season 2 of Prodigy, season 5 of Lower Decks, nor season 3 of Strange New Worlds, which is going to come out. I think I'm going to make the cutoff there. I'm not going to wait for for Starfleet Academy Season 1. I think after Strange New World Season 3, I'm going to do an update of my Modern Track Top 25. Little side tangent. The other question is, in the first episode of Game of Thrones, when you saw Ed Sheeran, did you originally think that was Rupert Grint? They look a lot alike. I learned about that from my second favorite YouTube channel. After Enchantment of Eternity, you're my third. Okay, I will forgive you for calling me your third. Like Mark is first, and there's some other channel between us, and I'm third. Okay, that's all right, Tyler. Did I think when I saw Ed Sheeran that it was Rupert Grint? Here's my answer to that. I am completely disconnected from pop music. Well, that's not entirely true now. Like, there's certain things that I am connected to, but all overall, and especially then, I was completely disconnected from pop music. I only knew that Ed Sheeran was a rock star or whatever because everyone was making a big deal about it. I had never fucking heard of him. I would still not have heard of him. Probably if he didn't appear in Game of Thrones. Like, I didn't know who the fuck he was. I just don't pay attention to pop music. That's not my jam. I don't know anything about that. That's just completely not on my radar. So I didn't know who Ed Sheeran was, except that everyone made a huge deal out of it. And then, so did I think he was Rupert Grint? Who's Rupert Grint? Never heard of him. Right now, on this very day, this is the first time I've ever heard that name. No fucking idea who it was. So, no, I thought it was just some dude. And then everyone made a big deal about it and said, oh, it's Ed Sheeran. I'm like, who's Ed Sheeran? And like, so no, I didn't think it was Rupert Grint. I thought it was just some random dude that was not more significant than any other extra who appeared in it. That's what I thought. Like, I didn't know who Ed Sheeran was. And I still have not the slightest clue who Rupert Grint was. Never heard of him. Could probably Google him, but not going to. So, different generation than you, Tyler. This is different generation. All right, now let's see what people in the chat are chatting about. You're good enough. You're smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like you. wait, what? You're quoting Al Franken, Stuart Smalley. Why was that? Oh, because Norman mentioned Linda Richmond. Yeah, okay. See, Gen Xers, Saturday Night Live, cheers. Let's see. Okay, Alyssa, now you're feeling unloved. Quoting Saturday Night Live. Will Starfleet Academy explain why the EMH looks older? Maybe an update to his program or something. I'm sure they will throw in a line or something. I'm sure they will. He will probably say, "I wanted to look more distinguished as a professor," or something like that. I'm sure. I'm sure they'll explain it. They're not going to go into great depth on it, but there'll at least be a line, throwaway line that will explain it. Allison, I'm sorry to hear that you had a stroke and things are difficult. All my love to you. I hope that you get through it. Okay, so Aaron Lee says, to me, Ed was just some guy in armor. Yeah, that's what it was for me. Like, some random dude. I didn't know who it was, except that after the episode aired, everybody was like, oh my god, is that Sheeran? I'm like, who's that? I've never heard of him. Rupert Grint? Don't know who that is. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, so Brandon says the same thing. Why are you not going to bother with Starfleet Academy? It actually looks pretty good. You got to give it you can't not watch it. You got to give it a shot. Come on. Don't be like that. At least try it and have an open mind. It actually seems like it could be a pretty good show. All right. Grint played Ron Weasley in Harry Potter films. Oh, okay. I guess I didn't really know the names of the actors of anyone other than Daniel Radcliffe and I'm blanking on her name, but I love her. She's a very, very strong advocate for trans people, even though J.K. Rowling is the opposite. again, having a problem with my memories and drinking wine. Woman who played Hermione, who I love. She's amazing. Well, I thought I knew Daniel Radcliffe and her, but now I can't remember her name either. But I didn't really know anyone else's names. Let's see. Emma Watson. Yes, thank you. Emma Watson. I love Emma Watson. But yeah, those are the only two of those names I really knew. Like, I don't know anyone else's. And now I refuse to participate in anything remotely Harry Potter related for reasons that should be obvious. What else? Will Ferrell, number one, you still in there? You got some more random things that I didn't answer earlier? Should we touch on the latest episode of Lower Decks? I will do a 6 through 10 review next week, episode 6 through 10. So I will talk about it, but I wrote my review on my Facebook page. You can read that. I stand by that. It's this weird, like, trying to balance, like, because the fangirl of me was like for a lot of things, and like it's particularly and then Jessie Gender talked about this in her video, like how important it is for the LGBT community to finally have that paid off. The Garrick and Bashir, even though it's not our Garrick and Bashir, and one of them's a hologram, to finally have that paid off is immensely important. And then Sean Barrick on Trek Culture was making a big deal about this is a big deal that Jolene Blaylock is back in Star Trek because it looked like she never was going to be. So yes, this is monumentous, and like this is like, I mean, there's just so much about it. This is so great. But it's a 9 out of 10 for me and not a 10 out of 10. And it's not one of the best episodes of Lower Deck. Because when I think about what makes the best episodes of Lower Decks, it's always strong character stories for our characters. We had a pretty solid, I think, character arc for William Boimler, but he's not one of our known characters. He's only appeared in like 2 other episodes. I don't care that he's another version of Boimler. He's not one of our characters. We have not been following his development for 5 seasons. We have not been following his arc for 5 seasons. So this episode is lacking that. And even though there's so monumental things in Star Trek history occurred, and like my little inner fangirl was going crazy, and like I loved it, and I thought this was a better use of the multiverse than like say what the MCU does sometimes. Although I think the MCU can get it right at times, but I think and especially better than what the DCEU did with that terrible Flash movie. So that's the thing. We can put that with Star Trek Picard season 2. Just get that out of our memories. But yeah, I part of it just like loved it so much, but then at the same time I feel that lacking of the character story, and the fact that for 2 consecutive episodes right at the end of the series we get nothing from our characters, nothing, and that breaks my heart. And I know when they made this they didn't know it was going to be the last season, but I kind of feel like they should have had that in the back of their mind to be prepared for the possibility, because Discovery was axed after its 5th season and they hadn't been renewed yet for season 6. So I'm not saying that they should have wrote it like, oh, this is the finale, let's write an ending to this. Of course not. That would be silly. But at least think of things like, hey, what if this is the final season? Maybe we do want to feature Rutherford and Tendi a little bit more. Tendi beyond just the first couple episodes, and Rutherford at all. And T'Lan at all. Maybe we want to feature them a little bit more. And hey, maybe we don't want to have 2 of the final 3 episodes be about other characters, just in case. Just in case. We don't know. Just in case. I mean, I feel like they should have been thinking in that way, but instead it's, I guess they're Mike McMahon and the gang were just so confident that there was going to be another season that they didn't think about that. But I feel like they should have. I feel like they should have and again, not that they should have written a finale, but that they should have thought of things like, in case this is the last season, we probably shouldn't have the last 2 or 3 episodes. 2 of the last 3 be about completely different characters. um, but I don't know. That's just me. See, Allison, what do you agree with me on? Because that was so long ago, I don't know what you're referring to anymore. Brandon, you're such a sourpuss. I cancel myself. Yeah, you should get it back when Strange New Worlds season 3 comes on. Let's see. Aaron Lee, I'm a sucker for getting the band back together. It depends on how good the band is. Touche. Rutherford this season may become the new Mayweather, but he's not the new Mayweather because he has had great stories in the past. Reflections, one of my favorite episodes of Lower Decks, that was a Rutherford story. So maybe this season he's kind of Mayweather-esque. Also, what happened to his beard? How come like he started growing a beard and then he just is gone the next episode and they don't mention it anymore? You guys got anything else for me? Let's see. Get some of this water. Let's see. You haven't got to watch it yet? Oh, sorry for it's just so spoilers. It's just never watched it. Let's see. Anything else, guys? Or otherwise, I might have to wrap this up because I'm out of. I think I went through all of my memories. Touched on Lower Decks, and I'll get more into it next week. What else? And answered Tyler's questions and running out of things to talk about. Have you seen the Michelle Yeoh Section 31 trailer? I have. Any thoughts? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I'm kind of. It seems like they're not giving us very much plot wise, so I'm hopeful that that means that there's something really cool in there that they're intentionally withholding. But I'm just gonna. It's. I don't really have any strong opinions of it just based on the trailer. I just kind of want to see what it's like. I mean, I could see it being surprisingly good. I could also see it being a giant piece of crap. So I have no judgments until I watch it. So we'll just see. Oh, you agreed with me about Harry Potter being canceled due to J.K. Rowling's behavior. You were just talking about it with someone a few days ago. Yeah, I just will. I mean, I'm not going to tell other people to cancel Harry Potter. You do you. I would be nice if you were at solidarity with trans people and like didn't support her, but I also understand if you have a lot of good feelings about it, a lot of nostalgia, and it's one of your favorite things. Like I don't want to take that away from you. So I'm not telling anyone else what to do. But personally, I will have nothing to do with Harry Potter. You like my purple lamp? How can you see my purple lamp? What are you talking? How do you know? I have a purple lamp, but you shouldn't be able to see it. You just see my wine cellar. We're getting a Section 31 film called we're calling them the long treks because they're movies, but they're not being released in theaters. They're being released on Paramount Plus, and they're calling them long treks as opposed to the short treks. January 24th, Section 31 movie. No way they can do the whole show because Michelle Yeoh is way too big for it. They're just lucky she's coming back after winning an Oscar just to do this. It's like charity for them. Anyways, Yeah, did not care for Discovery's depiction of Section 31. Wasn't my favorite thing either. Brandon, there's not just talk about rebooting Harry Potter. It's happening. I believe it should be out in 2026, but it's in early stages of production. It's not just talk. It's like a thing that is happening, and it's going to be on Max. I know Mark doesn't like it when I call it Max because it's like, no, it's HBO Max. Like, I don't know. I'm fine with it being Max. It's whatever, but that's where it's going to be. Let's see. Oh, in my announcement video, you can see the purple lamp. Okay, I was like, wait, how can you see it? You can't see it behind my wine cellar. Like, yeah, but actually, I can make that lamp whatever color I want. I do like to keep it in the purple pink range, but I can make it. There's an app. Like you buy certain light bulbs that are like you can change the color on it, and then you buy an app and you can change to whatever color you want. But I do tend to keep it a purple or pink. I have one in my bedroom too. Why? No idea. I will not be participating in that new Harry Potter show in any way. Let's see. Well, if y'all don't bring me another topic, Harry Potter's lame, Rolling is lame, Tuvix is lame. Don't need any of those jokers in my life. I love how you lump Tuvix in with that. Cheers. There are 6 lights. Are you talking about here? In my wine cellar? Because I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lights. Oh, so is that the joke that there's fewer lights in the anyway? Yeah, because there's 5 on the ceiling and 2 like lamps behind me there. In the wine cellar. Not real lights. Anyways, in case you didn't know, I remember like I don't know, last year, a couple of years ago or something, like a person came on to my live chat who discovered me through my trans content, and I believe they were also a trans woman as well. And they only came for that one chat, and they weren't really into Star Trek, but they were just. But I remember like they were surprised, like they thought I was actually in a wine cellar, and I was like, no, it's a green screen. Like I'm not actually in a wine cellar. Which is funny. Anyways, it might be time to wrap this thing up. It's been almost an hour and a half now. I'm long finished with my memories. Scattered pictures. Okay, anyways. I think I'm gonna call this a live stream. I think I'm gonna call it good. So so very nice to have you, Allison. Always a special treat. Aaron Lee debut at Alyssa Jane's live chat. So great to have you. And of course, always love having the old school people who are always here. Brandon Neal Howells, Maddie Jester, Norman Buckwald, Tyler Cersei popped in for a bit. Will Ferrell #1, of course, popped in for a bit. Also regular. So, all right, good to see you all. The next one will probably be March, keeping in the same pattern, every 3 months. All right. Good to see you all. I will see you all soon, and watch. I got a bunch of videos coming up in December, so stay tuned. December is going to be my busiest month in a while. So see you all very soon. Goodbye.